The massive dome of the Galactic Council stretched endlessly above, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds. Admiral Lee Hanna stepped onto the speaking platform, her black boots clicking against the polished metal floor. Around her, creatures from across the galaxy filled tier after tier of seats that spiraled up into the shadows above. The air hummed with the constant chatter of universal translators working overtime. Tentacled beings from the outer rim whispered in clicking sounds while six-armed traders from the merchant worlds gestured wildly with all their limbs. In the highest seats, the energy-based lumina floated like living stars, their forms shifting between blue and gold. Hanna wore the simple grey uniform of Earth's Defense Force. No fancy decorations, no golden braids like the alien commanders around her. Just a small patch, showing Earth's blue marble against black space. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression remained perfectly calm despite the thousands of eyes, sensors, and other things studying her every move. The Council. Speaker, a floating jellyfish-like creature with a voice that sounded like singing crystals, announced her turn. The Terran representative will now present their military assessment. Hanna activated the holographic display beside her. Simple numbers appeared in the air, glowing softly against the chamber's dim lighting. No fancy graphics, no spinning ship models, just cold, hard data. Earth maintains an active fleet of 200 vessels, she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The Vorthak, delegate shot to his full 12-foot height, his insect-like mandibles clicking rapidly in what Hanna recognized as their version of hysterical laughter. His 4 arms spread wide as he addressed the chamber. 200? My personal escort? Fleet has more ships than that. His clicking grew louder, joined by similar sounds from other Vorthaks scattered throughout the seats. Behind him, the Crystalline Collective's representative began the haunting chime song that passed for laughter among their silicon-based species. The sound was beautiful and mocking at the same time, like wind chimes in a hurricane. Other crystal beings joined in, creating a symphony of ridicule that echoed through the dome. A scaled creature from the hegemony worlds stood next, his reptilian, features twisted in a sneer, his burning red eyes fixed on Hanna, as smoke literally rose from his nostrils. Perhaps the mammal should stick to fishing boats instead of pretending to build warships, he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. This triggered an even bigger wave of alien amusement. The blob-like Gelarians wobbled with what might have been giggles. Flying creatures from the sky worlds performed aerial loops that Hanna assumed meant they found something funny. Even the normally serious machine collective's robots tilted their heads in mechanical approximations of mockery. Admiral Park Jimin sat in the human delegation section, his hands gripped tightly on the armrests of his chair. His military training kept him seated and silent, but Hanna could see the muscle in his jaw working as he ground his teeth together. Next to him, Captain Kim Yuna stared straight ahead, her diplomatic mask firmly in place despite the flush of anger creeping up her neck. The numbers kept coming from other species, each one making Earth's fleet look smaller and more pathetic. The Zephyrian Empire's admiral, a being that looked like a cross between a tiger and a mantis, stood to announce their 50,000 vessels with obvious pride. The Crystalline Collective followed with 75,000 ships that were supposedly harder than diamonds and faster than light itself. The Void Hunters, mysterious beings in dark armor that never showed their faces, transmitted their numbers directly to the translators, 100,000 vessels capable of existing in normal space and hyperspace simultaneously. The crowd murmured appreciatively at this show of force. A creature that looked like a walking tree with glowing sap declared that the forest worlds maintained 30,000 living ships that could grow new parts when damaged. Something that might have been a sentient gas cloud announced 60,000 vessels that existed partially in another dimension. Through it all, Hanna stood perfectly still. She didn't fidget, didn't shift her weight, didn't show even the slightest reaction to the increasingly loud mockery filling the chamber. Instead, she quietly activated her wrist device and began recording everything. Every laugh, every sneer, Every dismissive gesture was being captured in perfect detail. The ridicule reached its peak when a small monkey-like creature from the trader guilds actually fell off his seat, laughing. 200 ships, he chittered between gasps. I've seen merchant convoys bigger than Earth's entire navy. This brought the house down. Creatures were slapping each other on the back, tentacles were waving in alien versions of applause, and several beings were making sounds that the translators couldn't even begin to interpret, but were clearly mocking. Finally, the chaos began to die down. Species settled back into their seats, still chuckling and commenting to each other about the amusing little humans and their toy fleet. The council speaker's melodious voice called for order. Though even that ancient being seemed amused by the proceedings, Hannah waited until complete silence fell over the chamber. Then she spoke again, her voice carrying the same calm authority. As before, as if nothing had happened. Earth's report is complete. We thank the Council for their enthusiastic response to our presentation. The word enthusiastic carried just enough subtle emphasis to make it sound almost like an insult wrapped in politeness. Several of the more intelligent species caught the implication and shifted uncomfortably in their seats. As the human delegation prepared to leave, whispers followed them like a tide. Aliens leaned toward each other, discussing the primitive species that dared to call 200 ships a fleet. Some wondered aloud why Earth had even been granted council membership in the first place. Others suggested that maybe humans would be better suited as servants or pets for the more advanced civilizations. But none of them noticed the small smile that played at the corners of Admiral Lee Hana's mouth as she walked toward the exit, her recording device still running, capturing every word. The 3 months that followed the council meeting felt like a lifetime to the human delegation. Earth's outer colonies continued their daily routines, unaware that their fate was being decided in boardrooms and war councils across the galaxy. Mining stations on Europa processed ice into fuel, while research outposts on distant moons studied alien artifacts that might hold the secrets to faster-than-light travel. But in the shadowy halls of the Hegemony Alliance, something far more sinister was brewing. General Krextar stood before a massive holographic star map in his private war room aboard the dreadnought Death's Edge. His reptilian form cast long shadows across the metal floor as he studied human territory with the patience of a predator. His scaled hide, which had once been deep green, now showed patches of battle-scarred silver from decades of conquest. Each scar told the story of another species that had dared to resist hegemony rule. Around him, his war council consisted of the galaxy's most feared military minds. Commander Zilketh, a spider-like being with 8 mechanical legs that clicked against the floor as she moved, managed the fleet's logistics. Her red compound eyes never missed a detail, and her cybernetic brain could calculate supply lines for 1 million ships simultaneously. Next to her stood Admiral Vorthak, whose people had once been peaceful traders before the hegemony conquered their homeworld. Now his forearms constantly worked on battle plans, his loyalty bought with threats against his remaining family. The irony wasn't lost on him that he now helped enslave other species, just as his own had been enslaved. The humans' mining operations are spread across 47 systems, Zilketh reported, her mechanical voice devoid of emotion. Their defense stations are minimal, mostly early warning sensors and a few patrol craft. Taking their outer colonies would be easier than conquering a child's toy box. Krextar's burning eyes fixed on the blue dot representing Earth. It's not about the colonies, he rumbled, smoke rising from his nostrils. It's about the principle. Every species in this galaxy needs to understand that defying the hegemony leads to only one outcome. The plan was simple and brutal. The hegemony would demand Earth's immediate surrender, using their overwhelming military superiority as leverage. If humans refused, they would demonstrate their power by obliterating a few human colonies as an example. Fear would do the rest. 3 months. To the day after the council meeting, the same chamber filled once again with representatives from across the galaxy. But this time the atmosphere was different. Word had spread about the hegemony's intentions, and the air buzzed with anticipation and barely concealed excitement. Many species saw this as entertainment, a chance to watch the upstart humans get their deserved punishment. General Krextar entered with all the ceremony of a conquering emperor. His personal guard of 12-foot-tall hegemony warriors flanked him, their power armor gleaming like black mirrors. Each warrior carried weapons that could level city blocks, and their helmets hid faces that had never known mercy. Their synchronized march across the chamber floor sounded like approaching thunder. The general himself had dressed for the occasion. His military uniform was adorned with medals representing 23 conquered worlds, each one a small civilization that had once thought themselves safe. His cape, woven from the silk of the extinct Harmony spiders, flowed behind him like liquid shadow. When he reached the speaking platform, Krextar didn't simply stand at the podium. He commanded it, his presence filling the entire chamber. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of absolute authority. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began, his words translated into 1,000 languages simultaneously, "we gather today to address a problem that threatens galactic stability. The human territories, with their laughably inadequate defenses, represent a security risk that the Hegemony Alliance can no longer ignore." He gestured toward the human delegation with one clawed hand, his movement casual and dismissive. "These beings claim sovereignty over 47 star systems, yet they possess neither the strength nor the wisdom to properly govern them. Pirates and raiders could easily use human space as a base for attacks against civilized worlds." The lie was delivered with such conviction that several council members nodded in agreement. The Trilarian Federation's representative, Councillor Vexhari, leaned forward in his crystalline seat. His people had once been warriors themselves before, choosing the path of diplomacy, and he understood the game being played. "What solution does the hegemony propose?" Vexhari asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Krextar's smile revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth that had evolved for tearing flesh. "The human territories will be placed under hegemony protection. Their outer colonies will be administered by competent authorities, and Earth itself will accept tributary status. In exchange, we guarantee their continued existence." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species, like the peaceful Harmony Collective, looked disturbed by the naked aggression. Others, particularly those who had suffered under human competition for trade routes, seemed pleased by the prospect of seeing humanity brought low. Ambassador Kim Yuna felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her. She had served Earth's diplomatic corps for 15 years, negotiating everything from trade agreements to border disputes. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. She could feel the weight of her entire species' future resting on her shoulders. Rising from her seat with practiced grace, she kept her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "The people of Earth appreciate the hegemony's concern for galactic security. However, we must respectfully decline this generous offer. Humanity is quite capable of managing its own affairs." The reaction was immediate and electric. Alien voices rose in a cacophony of surprise, amusement, and outright disbelief. How could a species with only 200 ships dare to refuse the hegemony's protection? Councillor Vexhari's crystalline features shifted into what might have been concern. "Ambassador Kim, surely you understand the mathematical reality of your situation. The Hegemony Alliance commands over 40,000 warships, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten rock. Your entire fleet numbers exactly 200 vessels." General Krextar decided to make the point even more theatrical. He held up one massive clawed hand and began counting on his fingers with exaggerated slowness, his voice dripping with mock patience. 200 little human ships," he said, extending one claw, "against 40,000 hegemony vessels of war." He extended another claw. Even the most primitive species should be able to understand such simple mathematics. Several aliens in the chamber began making sounds that their translators interpreted as laughter. The Blob Confederation's representative actually split into smaller versions of himself, each one wobbling with amusement. A group of mechanical beings from the robot worlds calculated the odds and displayed them on floating screens, 200 to 1 against humanity. Captain Song Minho, seated beside Ambassador Kim, had been monitoring communications from Earth throughout the meeting. His military-grade implant buzzed softly as an encrypted message arrived from Admiral Lee Hana herself. He quickly scanned the contents, then passed a datapad to Kim Yuna, with movements so subtle that most observers missed the exchange entirely. Kim. Yuna glanced at the message, and for just a moment something flickered in her eyes. It might have been relief or perhaps grim satisfaction. When she stood again, her posture seemed somehow different, more confident. "General Krextar, we acknowledge your mathematical assessment. However, Earth maintains its position regarding territorial sovereignty." The chamber fell silent for a moment, as if no one could quite believe what they had heard. Then Krextar's expression shifted from amusement to cold fury. Smoke began rising more rapidly from his nostrils, and his claws extended unconsciously, leaving scratches in the podium's metal surface. "Then you choose extinction," he hissed, his voice carrying the promise of violence that had terrified 100 worlds. 72 hours, humans. After that deadline passes, we will demonstrate why the galaxy's strongest species lead, and the weakest simply disappear. The voting process that followed was a mere formality. Species after species cast their votes in favor of the hegemony's ultimatum. Some voted out of fear, others out of genuine belief that might made right. The Zephyrian Empire voted yes, eager to see potential competitors eliminated. The Crystalline Collective agreed, viewing it as a natural selection process. Even traditionally, neutral species like the merchant worlds supported the motion, seeing economic opportunities in a hegemony-controlled human space. Only 3 species abstained: the Harmony Collective, whose philosophy prevented them from supporting violence; the Ancient Observers, who never interfered in younger species conflicts; and, surprisingly, the Machine Worlds, whose artificial intelligences had calculated variables that others might have missed. When the final tally appeared on the chamber's displays, the result was crushing. 47 species in favor, 3 abstentions, and 1 lonely vote against. Earth stood completely alone. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, conversations buzzed with speculation about humanity's fate. Most agreed that the humans would see reason and surrender before the deadline. After all, what choice did they have? 200 ships against 40,000 was not a battle, it was a mathematical certainty. But in the human delegation section, Captain Song Minho quietly deleted the message on his datapad, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes mathematics could be very misleading indeed. The countdown had begun exactly 72 hours earlier, ticking away on displays across the galaxy like a death sentence. On Earth, people went about their daily lives, but there was tension in the air. Children asked their parents why the news looked so serious. Workers in the orbital shipyards moved with extra purpose, knowing that war was coming whether they wanted it or not. In the depths of space, the Hegemony Alliance had assembled the largest invasion force in galactic history. 40,000 warships stretched across the void like a metal storm cloud, their hulls gleaming with weapon systems that could crack moons in half. Each ship bristled with enough firepower to level entire cities, and together they formed an armada that had never known defeat. General Krextar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Void Render, watching the final seconds tick away. On his chronometer, the massive dreadnought was a monument to hegemony engineering, stretching over 2 miles from bow to stern. Its black hull was scarred from dozens of battles, each mark a reminder of another world that had tried to resist and failed. Around him, his bridge crew worked with deadly efficiency. Commander Zilketh's 8 mechanical legs clicked across the metal floor as she coordinated fleet positions. Her red compound eyes reflected the glow of tactical displays, showing the human solar system spread out before them like a target waiting to be destroyed. 60 seconds remaining, announced the ship's artificial intelligence, its voice emotionless and cold. Krextar smiled, revealing those razor-sharp teeth that had become legendary across conquered worlds. "Open a channel to all ships. Let every crew member hear this moment." His voice echoed through 40,000 vessels as he spoke. "Warriors of the hegemony, today we teach the galaxy a lesson that will be remembered for 1,000 years. No species, no matter how stubborn or foolish, can stand against our might. When this day ends, the humans will serve as an example to any who dare question our authority." The cheers that followed could be heard even through the vacuum of space, transmitted across communication channels to create a roar of anticipated victory. But at exactly 72 hours and 0 minutes, something unexpected happened. Every communication array in the galaxy, from the smallest personal devices to the massive broadcast stations of entire civilizations, suddenly displayed the same image. Admiral Lee Hana appeared on screens in alien homes, military command centers, and even on the displays of hegemony warships themselves. She looked exactly as she had 3 months earlier at the council meeting. Same neat uniform, same calm expression, same unshakable composure. But something was different in her eyes now, something that made even hardened warriors pause and pay attention. "To the Hegemony Alliance and all observing parties," she began, her voice carrying across light years with perfect clarity. "Your ultimatum has been reviewed by the appropriate authorities and formally declined. Humanity will now respond in the manner we deem appropriate. We strongly advise all non-combatant vessels to maintain safe distances from designated combat zones." The transmission lasted exactly 30 seconds. No threats, no dramatic speeches, no last-minute pleas for peace. Just a simple, polite notification, delivered with the same tone someone might use to announce a weather report. Then every screen went dark. On the bridge of the Void Render, General Krextar stared at the blank display where Hana's image had been. For a moment, genuine confusion flickered across his reptilian features. Where was the fear? Where was the desperate begging for mercy that always came from species facing extinction? "Sir," his tactical officer called out, his voice tight with excitement. "Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the asteroid belt. The human fleet is emerging from hiding." Krextar's confusion vanished, replaced by predatory satisfaction. "All 200 of their pathetic vessels?" "Yes, sir, exactly 200 ships moving into formation." The general threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal that made his bridge crew wince. "This will be over in minutes. Signal all fleet commanders. Commence attack formation Delta 7. We'll end this quickly and broadcast the destruction across the galaxy." But as the hegemony fleet began its advance, something strange started happening to their sensor readings. The 200 human ships were registering on their instruments, but the numbers didn't make sense. Energy signatures that massive should have belonged to vessels the size of small moons, not the relatively tiny ships they could see with their optical sensors. Commander Zilketh's mechanical brain processed the data faster than any organic mind. "Kaikud." "General," she said slowly, "these readings are unusual. Each human vessel is showing power output equivalent to our largest dreadnoughts." "Sensor malfunction," Krextar dismissed with a wave of his clawed hand. "Human technology is primitive. Fix the instruments." But deep in human space, aboard the bridge of the Soul's Pride, Captain Park Jimin was watching very different displays. His tactical screens showed the approaching hegemony fleet as a dark cloud of red dots, each one representing enough destructive power to devastate a world. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet professionalism that marked Earth's finest military personnel. The bridge itself was a study in human engineering philosophy: clean lines, efficient design, no wasted space or unnecessary decoration. Every surface served a purpose. Every system had multiple backups. It looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate command centers of alien species, but appearances could be very deceiving. Lieutenant Choi Hanol, the ship's weapons officer, looked up from her console with eyes that held no fear, only determination. "Sir, all systems are showing optimal performance. Quantum disruptors are charged and ready. Gravitational manipulators are online. Reality anchors are stable." Around them, the bridge crew continued their preparations with practiced ease. Navigation Officer Kim Dae-ho plotted courses that would maximize their tactical advantage. Communications Specialist Lee Ji-woo monitored channels from across the galaxy, noting which species were watching the coming battle. Engineering Chief Park Sung-ho reported that their antimatter containment systems were running at perfect efficiency. Captain Park Jimin stood at the center of it all, his calm presence steadying his crew for what was to come. He had served in Earth's Defense Force for 20 years, working his way up from a junior officer on a patrol craft to command of one of humanity's most advanced vessels. He had never fought a battle like this one, but he had trained for it his entire career. "Signal the fleet," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty. "All ships, this is Soul's Pride. Final systems check complete. We are go for Operation Teacher." The response came back from 200 ships, each captain reporting ready status in voices that betrayed no doubt, no fear, no hesitation. These were the men and women Earth had chosen to represent humanity in its darkest hour, and they would not be found wanting. "Remember," Jimin continued, his words being recorded for history, "we are not here to conquer. We are not here for revenge. We are here to teach the galaxy a lesson it will never forget. Sometimes the smallest student teaches the largest teacher." Across the human fleet, weapon systems that had never been used in anger began powering up. Technologies that human scientists had developed in secret laboratories, far from alien eyes, came online for the first time. Energy patterns that violated everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics started building to levels that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. The hegemony fleet continued its advance, 40,000 vessels confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. Their sensors still couldn't make sense of the energy readings from the human ships, but their commanders dismissed the anomalies as equipment failures or human desperation tactics. They were about to learn the difference between quantity and quality in the most dramatic way possible. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first shot of the battle came from the hegemony fleet at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time. A massive plasma cannon from the dreadnought Death's Herald fired a beam that could have melted through the core of a planet. The energy bolt streaked across space toward the human vessel, Busan's Thunder, expecting to vaporize it instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma beam struck the human ship's shields and simply disappeared. Not reflected, not absorbed, but completely phased out of existence as if it had never been fired at all. The crew of Death's Herald stared at their instruments in confusion, checking and rechecking their targeting systems. "Direct hit confirmed," the weapons officer reported. "But target is showing no damage." General Krextar snarled from his command throne. "Fire again, all ships, open fire!" What followed was the most devastating display of firepower the galaxy had ever witnessed. 40,000 hegemony warships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams that could crack continents, missiles that carried antimatter warheads, gravitational weapons that could crush space stations into singularities. The amount of destructive force being thrown at the human fleet was enough to sterilize entire solar systems. But the human ships just kept moving forward, untouched by the storm of death surrounding them. On the bridge of the Soul's Pride, Captain Park Jimin watched the tactical display with calm satisfaction. The hegemony weapons were registering as hits on their sensors, but their phase-shift defensive technology was routing all that energy into pocket dimensions where it couldn't hurt anyone. "Weapons free," he announced to his crew. "Let's show them what 50 years of human engineering looks like." Lieutenant Choi Hanul's fingers danced across her console, targeting systems that had been built in secret facilities deep beneath Earth's surface. Quantum disruptors locked on target. Firing. The human response was swift and absolutely devastating. Where hegemony weapons had failed to even scratch human shields, human weapons tore through enemy defenses like they were made of paper. The quantum disruptors didn't just pierce alien armor, they convinced the atoms making up enemy hulls that they wanted to be something else entirely. Hegemony dreadnoughts began transforming into clouds of exotic particles that glowed with impossible colors. The gravitational manipulators were even worse. Human ships reached out with invisible hands and simply squeezed enemy vessels until their molecular bonds gave up and scattered into space dust. Entire squadrons of hegemony fighters found themselves compressed into balls of super-dense matter that promptly exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But the most terrifying human weapons were the reality anchors. These devices reached into the quantum foam that made up the foundation of space-time itself, and rewrote the rules of physics in localized areas. Hegemony ships would suddenly find themselves in zones where their engines couldn't work, where their weapons fired backwards, where up and down switched places randomly. Commander Zylketh watched her tactical displays in growing horror as red dots representing hegemony vessels began disappearing at an alarming rate. Her mechanical brain, designed to calculate odds and probabilities, kept giving her numbers that made no sense. "Sir," she reported to General Krextar, her voice synthesizer struggling to hide her confusion, "we've lost 15,000 ships in the first hour. Human casualties, 0. Impossible." Krextar roared, but even as he spoke, another 1,000 red dots vanished from the display. The human fleet moved through the battle zone like dancers performing a deadly ballet. Each ship knew exactly where every other ship was, their movements, coordinated by quantum entanglement communicators that worked faster than light itself. When hegemony forces tried to concentrate their fire on single targets, the humans would phase shift positions, swapping places with each other instantly across vast distances. Captain Song Minho commanded the vessel Inchen's Fury from a bridge. That looked deceptively simple. Like all human military design, it focused on function over form. No fancy decorations, no intimidating displays of power. Just clean efficiency that hid incredible technological advancement. Target their command. "Ship," he ordered his tactical officer. "Let's send General Krextar a message he won't forget." The Inchen's Fury fired what humans called a persuasion torpedo. The weapon didn't explode when it hit the void render. Instead, it convinced the massive dreadnought's armor plating that it really wanted to be a beautiful flowering garden. Within seconds, the most feared warship in the hegemony fleet was covered in alien plants that began growing at impossible speeds. General Krextar found himself commanding his bridge while surrounded by flowers that hummed with their own internal light. The psychological effect was devastating to his crew, watching their mighty flagship transformed into something that belonged in a peaceful park rather than a battlefield. But the real shock came when the human fleet demonstrated their defensive capabilities against concentrated fire. The remaining hegemony ships, now reduced to about 20,000 vessels, decided to focus all their firepower on a single human ship, the Daigu's Pride. 10,000 energy beams converged on the lone, human vessel simultaneously. The amount of energy being directed at that one point in space was enough to ignite a small star. Any conventional ship would have been vaporized instantly, leaving nothing but glowing particles. Instead, the Daigu's Pride absorbed every single beam and fired it all back at once, amplified by their exotic matter reactors. The redirected energy struck the hegemony fleet like the wrath of an angry god, vaporizing 3,000 ships in a single devastating counterattack. The bridge of the void render erupted in sparks and emergency lighting as impossible energies washed over the flagship's failing shields. General Krextar found himself thrown from his command throne, his scaled hide smoking from energy feedback. Around him, his crew struggled to make sense of instrument readings that violated everything they thought they knew about warfare. "How?" he whispered, staring at displays showing his once mighty fleet dissolving into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. "How is this possible?" That's when Admiral Lee Hana's image appeared on every functioning screen throughout the hegemony fleet. She stood on the bridge of her command vessel, looking exactly as calm and composed as she had during that first council meeting months ago. Behind her, human officers worked at stations that seemed almost primitive compared to the flashy displays. Preferred by alien species, but the sensor readings told a different story. Hana's ship registered on hegemony instruments as being the size of a small moon, its energy output comparable to a contained star. The humans had somehow built vessels that were bigger on the inside than the outside, using technology that made a mockery of conventional physics. "General Krextar," Hana said, her voice carrying the same polite formality she had used at the diplomatic meeting. "You made a fundamental error in your calculations. You counted our ships, but you never asked what those ships actually were." Around the battlefield, the surviving hegemony vessels, barely 3,000 out of the original 40,000, began fleeing in every direction. Some captains abandoned their posts entirely, using escape pods to get as far away from the human fleet as possible. Others tried to surrender, broadcasting messages of submission on every frequency they could access. But the most terrifying thing was that the human ships simply stopped. They didn't pursue the fleeing vessels. They didn't finish off the damaged ones. They just held position in space, demonstrating a restraint that was somehow more frightening than any display of aggression could have been. Each vessel in Earth's fleet, Hannah continued, represents 50 years of human engineering development. We don't build fleets the way other species do. We don't focus on quantity. We build mobile weapons platforms, each one capable of operations that your scientists would consider impossible. To demonstrate her point, she opened a communication channel to Captain Song Minho aboard the Incheon's Fury. "Captain, please select an appropriate target for a demonstration of our standard armament." Song Minho's tactical officer quickly identified a barren moon orbiting a gas giant at the edge of the solar system. No life, no strategic value, nothing that anyone would miss. "Target acquired, Admiral. Uninhabited celestial body approximately 2,000 kilometers in diameter. Proceed with demonstration," Hannah authorized. What happened next would be remembered by every species in the galaxy for generations to come. The Incheon's Fury fired a single shot, a beam of energy so tightly controlled that it was barely visible to the naked eye. When it struck the moon, there was no explosion, no dramatic fireworks. The moon simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a rocky sphere that had orbited its parent planet for millions of years. The next moment, there was empty space and a brief flash of light as matter was converted directly into energy with perfect efficiency. "This concludes Earth's defensive action," Admiral Hannah announced on all galactic frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy could hear her words. "We trust this demonstration clarifies our position regarding territorial integrity and sovereignty. Earth wishes all observers a pleasant day." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. The battle that was supposed to demonstrate humanity's weakness had instead revealed that Earth possessed technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. The small mocked human fleet had just destroyed the largest invasion force in galactic history while barely breaking a sweat, and they had done it all while maintaining perfect politeness. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of the battle's end, every species with communication technology was broadcasting the impossible footage. The mighty Hegemony Alliance, conquerors of 100 worlds, had been reduced to fleeing survivors by just 200 human ships. On the crystal homeworld of the Trilarian Federation, Councillor Vexhari stood in his private chamber, watching the battle recordings for the 15th time. His crystalline body flickered with colors that indicated deep thought and growing concern. As one of the galaxy's most experienced diplomats, he understood immediately what this meant for the balance of power. "Prepare my personal shuttle," he commanded his aide, a younger Trilarian whose crystal formation still showed the bright hues of youth. "Set course for Earth's embassy, and prepare the formal apology documents." The journey to Earth's embassy station took 6 hours through hyperspace. During that time, Vexhari composed himself for what would be the most important diplomatic mission of his long career. The embassy itself was a modest structure compared to the massive complexes maintained by other major powers. Human design philosophy favored practical function over impressive appearance, something the galaxy was just beginning to understand. Ambassador Kim Yuna received him in the main diplomatic hall, a simple room with clean lines and comfortable seating. She wore the same style of uniform she had worn during the council meetings, but now the other delegates' mocking laughter seemed like an echo from another age. "Councillor Vexhari," she greeted him with perfect diplomatic courtesy. "This is an unexpected pleasure." Vexhari's crystalline features shifted through several color patterns before settling on formal blue, the traditional shade for serious diplomatic business. "Ambassador Kim, I come bearing the unanimous decision of the Galactic Council. We wish to offer our most sincere apologies for our previous misunderstanding of humanity's capabilities. He produced a document that shimmered with holographic seals from every major species in the galaxy. The formal apology was written in over 300 languages, a testament to how thoroughly the Council wanted to make amends.